So just before we start, I just want to ask you, are you aware you're being filmed and are you happy to be filmed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm okay with that, yeah.
So I'm here today and I've got kind of a banner and it's got like a blanket statement on it, and the statement says you can't love animals and eat them. And I wanted to know, do you agree with me? And if you disagree with me, kind of why would you disagree with me?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, no, I think you can love animals and still eat them. Like, back home, I look after chickens, and these ones are pets, but I also have cousins that have looked after chickens, and they've had this big farm where they did raise them and they did love them, but then at the end of the day, they did kill them. They did eat them. That was like, they took the best care of them, but there was still, like, it was only like a small holding. There was no like huge farm or anything, but it was still a process for them of, they looked after them, they gave them the best food that they can, like made them have a great life, but at the end of the day, they still ate them. Like, it was still a...
And did they have the chickens purely because they were going to eat them at the end of their life, or?
Well, no, it was both. It was they both really enjoyed keeping them, and they both really, and yeah, they had food that they knew what had happened to it, and it would be like an event. So it would be like, oh, we've raised this chicken. Or like they had geese as well, and then you'd eat it for kind of Christmas or Easter kind of thing. So it was, yeah, that sort of thing.
And I guess the best way of defining whether or not that situation is a situation of love will be to define what the word love means, right? So what does the word love mean to you?
Oh,
it's a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, really philosophical question there. I don't know. Love, I guess, means that you care for something unquestionably, I guess. That's how I would define.
And so do you think that you can show care unquestionably if the main focus at the end of the day was to take life?
I would say so. I mean, obviously, this isn't... Actually, no, we're not going to go there. I was going to go something with war, but no, we won't do that. I would still say so, yes. Like, you can still show compassion and love towards something that you will eventually kill. Like that, I still think that you, with that regard, like, you can't be like, I hate this creature. Like, I would never describe that sort of feeling towards something as like hatred. Like you care for something. So, like, at the end of the day, yeah, you are going to kill them, but that was the process that it was going to go through to begin with. At least in like the chicken context, anyway. Like,
I think you raise an interesting point. Is that love and hate are very binary terms, right? And there's this whole area in the middle. And I guess, although I would probably agree with you that did you say it was your friends?
My cousin. Actually.
So although I agree that probably your cousins didn't have a hatred for the chickens, I think to use the word love would be a stretch in the same way that using the word hate would, because they're there for kind of a reason at the end of the day. And if those chickens weren't able to fulfill that reason, then whether or not that care would still apply might be slightly negotiable. How about if we apply it to a different situation? And we take chickens out of the equation because chickens, commercially are eaten, and we take an animal that we probably wouldn't eat so much. So say, it's kind of cliche, but let's say dogs because it's the most, prevalent family animal. And so would you classify someone a dog lover if they maybe rescued dogs from Battersea Dogs Home or wherever, and then after maybe 6 months of life they killed them? Would you classify that person as a dog lover?
I would. Yes, honestly, yeah, I would, because I have a stance that from talks like this on kind of what we should be eating, I can't sit here and then be like, well, I eat these select animals, but I can love these. Yeah. So I'll give anything a try. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, well, I'll only accept eating chickens. I'll only accept eating pigs. Pigs are equally as intelligent as dogs are, if not more intelligent, and we still eat them. So in terms of that context, like, yeah, I would still describe that person as a dog lover because I can't sit here and say anything else.
I think that's an interesting point. It shows moral consistency, which is something that so few of us have when it comes to animals, right? We're so morally inconsistent. It's almost like a form of moral schizophrenia where we have different views depending on what animals are in question. So, okay, let's apply this. I think I know what you're going to say. So let's apply this to the next step. So we've done animals that we eat, animals that we would conventionally have in our homes. So what about humans? Can we love humans if we kill them? Can we love a partner if we kill that partner, that loved one?
Well, I mean, if you look at, say, kind of, there is people did eat people. People, like, back in the day still like, they loved those people, but they still resorted to cannibalism. Like, that still was a thing that happened tribally as a form of love to worship.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So I can't say, like, obviously I don't want to kill a human, but I don't think I could equally sit here and say that no, you can't love a human if you're going to kill it, because people did do it as the highest form of love towards something.
But were they murdered to be eaten, or did they die and then eaten as a form of respect once they died naturally?
That historically I don't know, but from what I know of it, it was that they were just citizens and they were then chosen and then killed. So
I guess I think for me the differentiation would be that kind of consensual attitudes where, you know, the human was probably aware they were going to be eating and probably had agreed on some level to have that action partaken on them, whereas the animals that we do these things to, they don't have a say in that matter and they don't have a choice in what happens to them. And do you think that the chickens that your cousin ate, do you think that they would rather have continued living and being cared for as opposed to being killed and eaten if they had that choice?
I mean, obviously they would have preferred to live. That is what everything would prefer to live. But biologically, all of these animals are designed to, at some extent, be eaten, be killed. Chickens have so many offspring for the sole purpose that there will eventually be some that die. So.
But not to be eaten necessarily. That's more a survival of the species.
Yeah, survival of the species. But again, it's still, they need that survival of the species because they know they're going to get hunted. They need to, like, spread the widest they can to ensure survival. Yes, but they do it deliberately because they know that that fact will happen.
But hunted by animals that need to eat them for necessity or eat them for pleasure?
Necessity, but then I wouldn't say that we eat them out of pleasure.
So what reason would you say that we eat them then?
Because they are an effective source of our dietary requirements. We are biologically developed to eat meat.
And in what sense are we biologically developed to do so?
Well, first of all, like our incisors, they exist for meat tearing, to be able to eat and take meat off the bone. They are designed for that.
Do you know which animal has the largest canines on the planet? As land animal.
There's going to be some sort of like goat, isn't it?
It's a hippopotamus who is herbivorous. And I think the canine one's the interesting one, but like most animals, even herbivores, have canines. Even, you know, have this saber-toothed deer that have canines. And I think the thing about our canines is they evolved from when we were primates and we used them for defense rather than for tearing flesh. I mean, if I gave you, say, a chicken now and you had to just eat the chicken, you wouldn't be able to do that with your canines. You wouldn't be able to rip them apart. You need to go through a process of depulking them and, you know, cooking them to make sure they're soft and tender, so then we can eat them. But the canines we have are probably quite rude. I want to go back because I want to go back a little bit because I don't want to press this about that necessity point again. Okay, and you said, well, you know, they offer a dietary requirement that we need, absolutely, protein and such. But can we get those dietary needs or requirements from other sources?
I mean, it's been proven that we can. So, but in terms of kind of, I don't know, I guess we can. We can get it from other ways. Whether they are as 100% as effective as meat, I disagree. But you can get it from other sources, yeah.
And do you disagree because you've seen science that suggests otherwise, or do you disagree just because you personally feel that it wouldn't make sense for that to be the case?
When I've, say, tried it, or I've got friends that are vegan, and one of their major complaints is that A, they're eating all the time, and B, they always feel really tired if they don't constantly eating. So from that extent, I would say, yeah, that it isn't as effective as a protein source as what has been shown with animals.
But in the point of tiredness, what macronutrient provides us with energy?
That would be...
That's a bit of a trick. I mean, like,
well, I know it is carbs. Yeah,
and there's no carbs in animal flesh, but protein doesn't provide us with that energy that we need. The glucose comes from carbs, so the energy point comes more from a calorical, a calorie deficit rather than a protein deficit. So if they're constantly eating, then I would suggest they probably need to eat more calorically dense sources. But then I don't know your friends personally, so I can't comment on their situations. But I guess the point is, if we can get those nutrients from other places, plants, then there is no necessity for us to get them from animals. And so if we don't do it for necessity, why do we do it then?
Then I guess to some extent, then yeah, I guess it would be for pleasure, but I guess culturally, then you would be like, it depends on what angle you're taking it. Like here, yes, it would be from pleasure, but if you say look at kind of again places where they are more remote, they have to eat animals out of necessity because they have no other options. They haven't got the luxuries that I guess we have. So completely kind of, what's the word?
Justifies it. I agree. For me, it's about that idea of necessity, and where there's a necessity, there's a justification. So cannibalism is an interesting one. So there was a plane crash. I think it was in the Andes, and to sustain their life, the humans who survived the crash had to resort to cannibalism, which in that situation, we say that's a moral decision to make. But in everyday society, cannibalism isn't justified in London just because that happened there. So it's about necessity. And so I would make the point that you're right, in those places where they have to survive, I'm not going to go there and ask them to change my mind, right? But here where we don't have that necessity and we have that luxury, that privilege, whatever word you want to use, we therefore have an obligation to kind of fulfill our responsibility of not causing harm if we don't have to. So I guess the word is, if it's morally justifiable when it's necessary, how do you and I morally justify it when it's not necessary?
Well, I guess well, the only way you can morally justify it is by, if they are being raised to be killed, you make their life, their existence as best it can be. That equally, it benefits you as well as it does the animal, I guess. But then, like, I could equally say, like we were saying about love earlier. I was saying this to a friend over there. If you love an animal, hypothetically, we all went vegan like that. If you love the animals, where are those animals going to go? What's going to happen to them? Because the farmers, unfortunately, will not be able to afford to just keep them there. Like, that wouldn't happen. Also, if you love the animals, would that also mean, like, if we have to do, that means, we've got to decrease the population. If you're saying that you love the animals, how can you then say, like, do you have to then decrease the population through then not allowing them to breed? Is that not equally as kind of destructive to their natural way of living?
And to the habitats as well around them.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great question, and I really like it, and it shows a bit of insight. And I think the main point, I think, is that you said if we were to go vegan overnight, like click of a fingers, and that's not going to happen. Veganism is going to be a gradual shift over a period of time, probably decades at the very best, right? It's going to be a gradual process over a long period of time, which means that the only reason we have so many animals now, billions of them, is because we breed them into production because the farmers can sell them. And so the moment the farmer can't sell the animal and he can't make money from them, he won't breed them into existence. And we see this in some cases already. And so what's going to happen is as the number of vegans rise, the number of animals being bred will decrease proportionally until we end up with that vegan world where there's actually no more animals being bred into that.
But in that sense, you're then categorizing one form of animal over another one, in which that you're allowing animals that have been bred to be eaten to then die off.
Yes.
Which, is that not morally?
This is great. This is exactly the follow-up question I want. This is such a good question. And so this is what I didn't realize before I went vegan. And going vegan, it encouraged me to learn I've learned a few things that I didn't necessarily know before. And so the animals that we raise conventionally for any animal product, meat, dairy or eggs, has been genetically modified or at least selectively bred to fulfill their need on a higher basis. So, for example, the chickens that we eat, they grow to slaughter age in 6 weeks, which is very abnormal. The dairy cows have been modified to produce 10 times more milk than they would naturally. Sheep have been modified to produce excessive amounts of wool and have more children than they would. Pigs, have more children and to grow larger. So these animals aren't natural animals to begin with. And the problem is that when we've set up these systems of farming, we've destroyed huge amounts of habitats. We destroyed huge amounts of woodlands and forests, and we brought a lot of animals that were native to this country to the point of extinction. Certain birds, and we've crowded deers and other animals into really confined spaces that they would have lush green forest lands if we hadn't have done these things. So, if we were to reduce the animals that we breed for meat to the point of where they weren't being bred anymore and probably wouldn't exist, what that would in turn allow is for natural habitats, natural woodlands, natural forest lands to replenish, and animals that are natural and are native and should be alive, though they would be able to replenish and repopulate, and we'd have much healthier ecosystems as a result. But the animals that we've bred to a point where they're not natural wouldn't be around. But that doesn't mean there's no such thing as a natural cow or a natural chicken or a natural pig in the world, because they do exist. But these animals aren't even necessarily native to this country anyway. I mean, we had wild boar and such, but the chickens we use are descendants from red guinea fowl in Southeast Asia, so they shouldn't necessarily be here to begin with. So, although I think it's a great question.
Then you're still having that balance that you're having a problem with people that eat meat. You're then still you're having that sanctity of life is still sanctity of life. So regardless of whether they're natural, they're around now. So that is still has to be taken into account, that these animals are still in existence. You would be, yes, they would be killed if they continue to stay, people were to stay to eat meat, but by not eating them, you're then providing them with, there is no end goal, like they're just being produced and then they're dying and then you're stopping them from going anywhere. At least with eating them, their life becomes at least somewhat, I guess, meaningful, other than just being bred out of existence.
Okay, so I think a couple of things is there are sanctuaries that exist around the world, and sanctuaries provide haven precisely for these animals. Now, there's not that many of them, but theoretically what would happen is as we reduce those population sizes, we could have more sanctuaries, and so we wouldn't necessarily just kill them all off. We would have them in like these kind of, a sanctuary, right, instead. So I think that's something that would be important to note. And I guess the question is that it's an idea of net positivity. We're getting into philosophy again, which is always the trouble with this kind of subject, is the idea of a net positive life. And so can we justify an animal's death if they've had a net positive life at the end of it? But the problem is these animals that we breed, well, they don't have a positive life anyway. And even if we were to give the animals, big lush green pastures to roam around in, well, the environmental consequences of that is so disastrous anyway that it still has a detrimental impact to our own species, but also other species of native animals. And so the idea of the sanctity of life argument, I think, is a really solid argument, by the way, and it's made me think about things I've not thought about before, so I appreciate that. It still doesn't justify wiping out naturally occurring species of animals, the environmental destruction that's caused of that, and also, the fact that those animals still have to die. So although it may seem almost like a contradiction to say we should no longer have these animals, the byproduct of that is still is more net positive in this situation than it would be to be continuing to breed billions of animals just so they have a life to be killed and the destruction that comes about because of that.
Okay, so on the subject of kind of habitat then, where are they going to grow all the plants? Like the vast quantities of food that provide, say, the high calorific quantities that are needed still require a vast amount of space. Like, regardless of whether you get rid of like the massive fields and stuff, or that are covered in like the raised cattle, any kind of livestock, it's still going to be taken up and then heavily controlled through plants and all of that. It will be there, and then it'll be pesticides, and then it'll be all of that sort of stuff that will still not allow for the return of relative species that would have been indigenous to that environment to begin with. So I don't know, I think that it would either way would still be taking up a vast amount of space, and the water that it would require to do that would still equally be the same.
Again, I think there's a real logical basis to what you're saying there, and for me, I can see the progression that's in place. But this is what I used to think as well. And then there's a study that came out just earlier this year. It was done by Oxford University. It was a 5-year study, and the study was looking. It was It's the most comprehensive analysis that's ever been conducted, looking at the relationship between farming, all types of farming, and the environmental destruction it causes. And it took place in, they studied 40,000 farms, I think, in 119 countries around the world. And anyway, the results that they found at the end was that if the world swapped to a plant-based diet, we could reduce the amount of agricultural land we need by 75%. And now the thing is that we kill 56 billion land animals every year, and we have to feed those animals something. We're talking billions of cows, billions of pigs that eat more than most humans do, or all humans do probably. So the fact is that we're producing so many plants anyway just to feed these animals. In fact, they say it's between 10 and 12 billion humans we could feed with the food that we grow livestock animals anyway. And we're talking things like soy, which is a complete protein, is calorically dense, with wheat, maize, barley, all these foods that we use and are part of our calorie intake through breads and carbohydrates and stuff like that. But we could then use those for human consumption. And in doing so, we could feed every mouth on this planet, and we could also reduce the amount of agricultural land that we need. So although there will be increases in certain amounts of plant farming, probably more fruit and veg and such, the overall plant agricultural industry can decrease significantly because we won't need to feed all these animals anymore because they won't be sustaining life anymore. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I have nothing that I can do.
But this is the thing, right? But this is why, for me, it's always about a process of education, because there's so much stuff I have no comprehension of about anything in the world. But then when you learn it, you kind of it opens your horizons. And I think and people often say to me, "Oh, you must think that people eat meat are bad people and are horrible." And no, I really hate that, and I don't see that as being true, because if you don't know, then you can't make a decision, right? So it's about, if someone doesn't have all the knowledge, they can't be held morally accountable for the actions that they make. But when we have that more knowledge, we can start making more informed decisions, and that's just really what I want to help people do. Not help, that sounds so culty. I want to encourage people to make more informed decisions just by hopefully provoking a conversation within them. So I guess we'll bring it back to what we were saying earlier about necessity and morality. And so without that necessity, and knowing that maybe certain things could be changed in a more positive manner through a vegan diet, what would maybe hold you back from trying it, giving it 30 days?
Going vegan.
Is it a taste thing?
It is a taste thing, but I guess it is down maybe my ignorance, but I generally just prefer the taste, and I feel that I have more energy after eating meat. I don't know, I just prefer it to anything other, I guess.
I was the exact same. And the question I asked myself was, what do I value more, my taste buds or the life of an animal? Which do you think has higher value, taste buds or animals?
I guess animals.
It's a bit of a. I always think it's a bit of a weird question, because it seems like the answer is obvious. And sometimes when I ask people, they always say taste buds, and I think it's to try and stay morally kind of like aligned with what they're saying. And so with that in mind, next time you're in a supermarket and you're faced with the choice of buying chicken or cow or pig or whatever it is, how will you justify the action to yourself if you've established that their life is more valuable than the pleasure you get from eating them?
Well, I guess the only way that I can is by making sure that what I am buying, it has been looked after in the best possible way.
And how were they killed?
How were they killed? Probably, I'm not too sure on how chickens are killed, but I know that how my uncle used to do it is so.
Or mass-produced would be cutting the throats and.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I guess that way then, yeah.
And do you think that animals who were raised in, say, an organic situation, do you think that their quality of life? Okay, let's go. Do you think the quality of life is better, and also do you think they're killed in a more humane way than, say, regular, battery-produced chickens?
Well, isn't organic? They only get a few extra. It's free range that you need to get, isn't it, rather than organic?
Organic's dodgy. Free range in itself is a dodgy one as well. But okay, I think I maybe confused my question a little bit. Do you think that even if we give animals a really good life, do they still have to be killed in the same way?
No, I don't think they have to be killed in the same way. I mean, I'm not entirely sure on the full ramifications of how you would necessarily kill it 100% ethically and with the least pain, but...
Does that make it humane? I guess that's the phrase, isn't it? Is there a humane way to kill an animal?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah. The same way that people put dogs down. Like, they believe they're doing it humanely.
Yeah. And I think in a situation when we euthanize dogs, it is a humane death because the dogs are suffering, and we do so to relieve them of their suffering. But when we kill animals, that although they are suffering because of the situations they're in, they're not suffering because they're dying. They're suffering because of human-inflicted, like exploitation. So, still in that chance, do you still not think that they would rather have the opportunity to live, and because they'd rather live, that still means it's a cruel act rather than a humane act?
I mean, obviously obviously they would want to live, but I guess, the food chain is that they will be eaten by something. Like, that they not aware of that fact, but intrinsically they know they're being hunted. Like, that is, like, genetically within them, they know that something is going to try and kill them.
But does that provide justification for us to be the ones to do so? Or should we just let them live their life in a way that means they don't have to fear us? And yes, they may have to fear animals like, birds or other predators, but do they have to fear us as well?
I would say that we're no different to, say, like a hawk, like, that would be hunting them. Like, why is the way that we decide to do it better than that way? Like for cat food, for instance, like, that again is, we feed them meat. We don't feed them anything else. Though cats still do eat plants in and around the garden to supplement their meat diets. You still haven't kind of made that transition into trying to make cats eat veganly, I guess. So, like, to make the if we're saying that all life is the same, then I think you should brush everything with the same brush then, that every predator, which we are to some extent, should equally be kind of same sort of level of, we are the same thing.
So I don't believe that all life is the same. I just believe that all life should be granted the same right to live their life without us inflicting pain on them. And so the difference between us and, say, other predators is that moral agency, and the fact that we can exhibit free will and we don't have to do these things, whereas lions and tigers and even the hawk has to kill to survive. They need it, but we don't. I think that's the difference there, is we shouldn't base our morality on actions of wild animals. Even though I don't think that we're necessarily vastly superior, we are obviously very different. And I think that's the important thing to say. Is it at the end? Is that anything else you'd like to say? Or? Okay. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.